because I'm going to introduce our final presenter to announce another very special partnership indeed. Someone who needs little introduction to our Gen family. They are from the startup Genome. Please give it up for J.F. Gauthier.
Over there.
How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Well, thank you, JF, for joining us. I think, as you know, at our work at Gen, we like to think we do research. We like to think that we know what to tell all the policymakers that ask us, how can I be a better leader and how can I build a more robust ecosystem? And of course, we had a fantastic research summit. I think you were very much a part of yesterday afternoon, and we've got lots more research to come. But at the end of the day, we lean on the extraordinary depth and leadership of organizations like Startup Genome, and we're very, very excited about this. And one of the things we're proud of is that the Global Startup Ecosystem Report that we've done with Startup Genome over the years is a continuation, something that we're proud to be helping publish and make sure that the data is being used by governments around the world. But we've got something new to announce today, and this comes as a result of constantly thinking about what information, what data do policymakers and decision makers most need in order to be removing the barriers in the path of entrepreneurs as policymakers. So, JF, I'm going to turn over to you and say, what are we about to do? Tell us about it.
We're about to launch the first Nations Report of Startup Genome and Global Entrepreneurship Network. And of course, I forgot my clicker, so I don't know if someone wants to
clicker's coming,
help me out here.
There we go.
But, you know, the problem with a lot of the ranking that we've seen globally on ecosystems is that at the end of the day, the rich countries and the big countries always end up on top. And our Global Startup Ecosystem Report is designed asking, if you're an entrepreneur from Timbuktu, where should you go to maximize your chances of creating a big startup, a big success? And so therefore, bigger is better, that makes sense. But when we want to give feedback to the policymakers to say, from what you had, from your innovation potential based on your laws, your patents, your corporate fabric, how well did you do with your innovation policy? So now we're launching the first report that's really looking at a ranking that is based on a fair, normalized ranking by GDP and by population, and looking at the power of their innovation policies over the last 10 years and see where are you at. So you can really benchmark your effectiveness of past policies and then start looking at what can I do to further it, because our mission at Global Entrepreneurship Network and Startup Genome is really to help you grow your startup ecosystem and make better decisions. As how can you grow an engine of job creation or future-proof jobs and economic growth for the next century, right?
JF, let me interrupt you there. So the difference here is that rather than a report that ranks based upon just the end result, like clearly I'm imagining countries like the United States are always going to come out first or second, or cities in the United States like San Francisco. Yeah. The difference with this is that we're looking at the progress they made in the recent history based upon the baseline set of ingredients that they had to work with. Exactly. Is that a fair way for me to translate this?
Yeah, exactly. From your assets and from what you had, where you're starting from, how far did you go up to now?
So you might learn that actually I was cooking a meal with 3 ingredients. You know what? I'm missing 4 or 5 over here. Eh?
Exactly. So now we want to drive policy with this and being a barometer of how do you improve over the next few years. Are you moving up in the ranking, or are you not? And for me, creating a ranking, the first discussion we had, Jonathan and I, we wanted to say, hey, if the ranking is good, the best African startup ecosystem should be among the top. And the best Latin American ecosystem should be among the top, because clearly they're doing a lot with what they had, what they started from. And that's what we created. So if you look at the first ranking, the top 20 is on the left, and you can see that Kenya is 17th in the world, and I'm sure they've never been on any innovation ranking in the top 20. Brazil is 23rd, Nigeria 25th. And then we separated by region because it's more peer-to-peer comparison. But the report is breaking those issues of trying to compare a big, large country in terms of population, or rich country with a developing country or a small country. And you can see Singapore, that's very small, is number 1. Estonia, extremely small, but did so much to develop their ecosystem, is number 4.
So I guess the lessons people can take from this is that they can look at Estonia and Singapore and say, what did they do differently with the available baseline that they started from that allowed them to achieve this? So
yeah, and that's the next step. So the next step is really a policy benchmarking to see those that are above you, what did they do? So comparing the policy that matters, not the 50, 70, 80 things that sometimes the European Union say we need to do. But at Startup Genome, we've been working with the best, the fastest growing ecosystem, and we know what matters the most, and benchmarking so that you can find out what have we not done that we should think about doing. Really giving you clear feedback and directional input, and that's the policy benchmarking that we're launching together today.
Yep.
So So we've started it with the G19 in November, looking at different funding policies, talent policies, and program policies, scoring them, and having a barometer of what they should have done and what have they done. So you can see nobody is perfect, right? There's no 10 ranking in any of those, but you can see how France and Australia have done more, and so that's a good feedback for them. Look at India and Brazil, right? They're far away, so they're ranking pretty well, but of course there's a long ways to go. If they start acting on the policies that matter, that they've not done yet, then they'll do better.
Fantastic. What are the challenges for us doing these rankings? Obviously we're attacking one here, but tell us more as we evolve this ranking. What can people tell us when they give us feedback? So people go and will look at APEXE, they'll decide, is this a good way for us to really accelerate the performance of our ecosystem? What are the kind of questions we'd love to ask of the global ecosystem representatives? Like, what do we want to know from them, JF, in terms of how we shape this report going forward?
Yeah, so for them, we wanted them to use it and learn from it, because it's all about creating action, right? Creating action from the government, and the right action. Sometimes there's a lot of wasteful policies, so we want to guide them towards the policies that have real impact. And having a barometer helps us differentiate who has impact from those that don't, and separating the wasteful policies from the good ones. But we need a lot of help right now also to identify what have you done and codify it really well. We cannot find everything on the web. And so starting a discussion with those countries so that we can really help them benchmark and identify their gaps so that they can start acting. And of course, this is much more important in AI. AI is starting. We know that it's going to displace a lot of jobs, going to eliminate some. And all the large institutions, of course, say there's going to be a lot of jobs created, almost as many. Yeah. The problem is that the creation of jobs in tech has been extremely concentrated. So we're launching also an AI policy advisory alliance so that we can help each other of like, this is a unique moment in the last 30 years where there's a really change in paradigm and how you build the startups, like the lean startup methodology, you can throw it out. Right? The concepts are still good, but the method and the journey is very different. And it's a unique opportunity like Israel did in Singapore in 1994 to enter early and really transcend their economy, to enter AI early and really leapfrog the other ones. And it's not about infrastructure investment and corporate support that we're talking about. You need to do this, right, to maintain your competitiveness of your economy. But all that money goes to Microsoft, NVIDIA, right? They go to Seattle and Silicon Valley. Whereas if you take 25, 50% of your budget and you say, let's put it in creating AI native startups here. Let's create a big community and let's create value in exports and attract foreign direct investments. Now you're investing in local entrepreneurs, hiring local people, getting experience in creating AI businesses from scratch and creating jobs in your country. And that's what we're proposing with this AI endeavor. And when you look at the current funding of AI native startups in the world, you see that it's much worse than in tech, in SaaS, in life sciences. 90% of the funding to AI native startups went to US and Chinese companies. So we want to change that. We want to make sure that governments have the tools and have the impetus, the motivation to enact policies at the funding level, program, talent, and community level to kickstart the development of the AI native startup ecosystems. Like Israel did, right, in 1994, and you can see by 1998, 2000, they had caught up to New York City in ecosystem value per population. Incredible, right? $300 million investment, and their economy experienced the fastest growth of GDP per capita in their history during the 90s. And yet they started only in 94. They had only 6 years to do that. But when you enter at the beginning of a technology shift, of a paradigm shift, you reap enormous benefits. So this is a call to action for everyone.
I want to make sure everyone's really absorbing what JF's saying, because this is a very extraordinary moment where every local and national government has the opportunity. JF has talked about AI-enabled startups. We're not talking about how do you compete with Silicon Valley or with China in trying to actually create the new AI companies, but AI-enabled companies. So what this is about doing is making sure that you're doing an audit of your ecosystem and saying, are we on top of this ecosystem looking through the eyes exclusively of AI? And I think is this early stage notion of looking at what did Singapore and Israel do for those 2 to 3 years, as it was described here as post Netscape, is really, really important, because that's the moment we are here in 2025. And it's most certainly an extraordinary insight that JF came up with, which was, why don't we look at this through the lens of AI and allow our ecosystem leaders to say, are we fully optimized for this revolution? And to ask now, not when it's too late in 5 years' time.
Yeah, and be audacious. You can imagine sitting in the seats of policymakers in Israel in 1994, right, and saying, should we do this? Should we spend so much money? $300 million, I checked, corresponding to France, it was $10 billion in investment that they did per year from 1994. And in the last 5 years, France invested $2.5 billion and already got about $120 billion in FDI as a result, right? Taking leadership in a hot space, in a paradigm shift, is extremely important and rewarding. But the same thing, we went back to the first exponential growth of startup ecosystem, the computer era, and you saw Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan entering early, not with that much money, just sometimes doing only an assembly plant of a semiconductor. But all these economies were poor or developing in those years and became rich just because of that bet. And you remember Singapore, that's how they transcended the economy, entering semiconductors. Mm-hmm. Was it clear that they should? I think it was pretty clear. They should have, every country should have invested in semiconductor. To me, it was changing the whole world, having computers. And the web started changing things so radically. And in Israel, they're like, well, we're 2 years after Netscape, the world is changing, we should bet on this new industry. And now this is the #1 industry in Israel. And now we're 2.5 years after ChatGPT, exactly the same time when Israel entered. This is when Paris entered in AI, reaping benefits. And now it's time to be audacious and say, let's not invest 10 million, let's invest 100 million, let's invest 200 million, 1 billion, but not in the platforms, not the infrastructure. Israel did not invest in infrastructure that much. They didn't have a Netscape, didn't have a Cisco, didn't have a Yahoo, didn't have a Google. They created an application ecosystem, the golden egg of the new economy. A lot of entrepreneurs creating business solutions, consumer solutions that will generate jobs, revenues, exports, FDI. And that's what we're talking about, for the government to be audacious and enter this market and support their entrepreneurs right now in AI native startups.
Right. JF, we got 60 seconds left, so I want you to think about what's the #1 message you would give these leaders of the ecosystems around the world. But before you do, I want to stress one thing. We've talked about investment, but many of the things that you need to make your ecosystem ready for the AI revolution don't involve money. It could be regulatory issues. It's essentially bold leadership to decide that we actually want to do this and we want to make this very possible. last thought here, JF, as we move
Last
forward?
thought is let's come together, because the policies that are needed to support AI native, most of them have not been created. So we created a policy advisory with leaders like Josh Lerner from Harvard Business School, Dan Herman was head of strategy for Canada in the first Trudeau mandate, and New York City, Israel, Singapore, leading thinkers, and come with us so that we can experiment and act and measure what's working, so that in a year or two you can be one of the leaders.
Fantastic. The knowledge, the expertise, and the openness to look at this through a global lens is there. We encourage you to encourage your research communities, your policymakers, but also for you yourselves, come to us. Tell us how we can help. JF, thank you so much indeed. This is going to be a powerful new ability for us to quickly accelerate the performance of our ecosystems. And without data and without really understanding what we're doing, we can't do that effectively. So fantastic. Congratulations to Startup Genome and for your leadership in taking us into the next chapter of this revolution.
And thank you, Jonathan, for partnering with us on this. Thank you.
Always fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate it.